Good morning everyone and welcome to another Art of Crypto video. Today's markets, we have seen lateral movements. We haven't seen the markets moving at all. The markets are quite stagnant, moving at less than 0.5%. Bitcoin is standing below $20,000 still. Ethereum is closer to $1,000 after falling almost 5% in the last 7 days. BNB 226. Looking at the entire market, we don't see much movement. It's just quite stagnant. Moving on to the price of Bitcoin, we see that there was an increase to 22,000 and then we saw a steady decline after also the euro has lost a lot of ground to the dollar. There's been a lot of bad news in the European Union. The gas supply has basically been cut off from Russia to Germany, and that has caused the price of euro to plummet as well. If you see here, euro dollar is 1.00, something that hasn't been seen for the last 20 years. And that's has caused the price of Bitcoin to also go down, and by extent, the whole cryptocurrency market follows Bitcoin naturally, since Bitcoin dominates almost 43% of the whole market cap. It's now standing at 19,600, and it wants to test the $20,000 support level, but really can't. We will see it maybe in troubled waters now. By troubled waters, I mean struggling to reach the psychological level, treading bare at it, maybe dropping a little bit, or maybe even touching 20,000. But until there is some very good news in the market, I don't see it actually going up. And the prices of Ethereum has followed a similar pattern. If I just switch to Ethereum here, we have seen a massive spike to 1,280 and then a massive drop to 1,031, and now it's trading at 1,076. So it's seen a recovery and a trend from about 2 weeks ago. So it's back at the levels before this spike, and we see sort of like a triangle forming here, and the prices started to rise again, but it still doesn't erase the massive losses it has incurred in the last 4 or 5 days. On some news, Three Arrows Capital office is abandoned, founders are missing. This follows its bankruptcy filing last month. So the founders are currently missing, and when court-appointed liquidators recently visited the firm's Singapore office, all they found was a locked door and a pile of old mail. So it means that they've abandoned the office for some time now. And while a lawyer in Singapore purporting to represent the founders recently approaches the foreign representatives who want answers from Three Arrows Capital, the founders have not yet begun to cooperate with the foreign representatives in any meaningful manner. Additionally, there's a heightened risk of Sue and Davis, who are the owners, to attempt to transfer Three Arrows Capital assets to new accounts or wallets, because a substantial portion are cash and digital assets which are readily transferable. So they're trying to save themselves by basically transferring the remaining assets that are in Three Arrows Capital's bank accounts, wallets, and balance sheets to their personal wallets or even bank accounts. And that spells trouble, because it means that they're putting themselves first before the investors. And a company like Three Arrows Capital, and such a reputable one in the crypto space, who always said that the customer comes first, is jumping ship at the first sign of trouble. The liquidation representatives became concerned with the availability of the founders and the state of the company shortly after receiving an email on July 6th from a law firm purportedly representing the founders. Crumpler and Farmer asked for an urgent meeting and were denied, and instead agreed with Advocatus Law LLP to a July 8th Zoom call. So Advocatus Law LLP is the one that are represented Three Arrows Capital, but on July 8th, the law firm and the founders all ghosted and never appeared in the Zoom call. So it appears like they have closed shop and they have run away with the money that was remaining in the balance sheet. So instead of paying out the investors first, they're choosing to take the money and basically save themselves and enjoy this money. Remember that Three Arrows Capital filed for Chapter 15 bankruptcy protection in June after the collapse of Voyager, which had unpaid loans to Three Arrows Capital totaling $646 million. So Voyager, which collapsed because of Celsius, was owing Three Arrows Capital $646 million. That's a lot of money. And because they weren't getting this money back, this became sort of unsecured, and the balance sheet had to reflect this, which means that they weren't solvent anymore and they weren't liquid anymore. And because of this, they also had to file for bankruptcy because they had no money to pay off investors. And remember that 3Rs Capital isn't the only firm facing a liquidity crunch. Earlier this month, KuCoin's native token tanked on rumors that it was insolvent. However, that hasn't been proved yet. Meanwhile, crypto lender Nexo announced plans to acquire rival Vault after it halted client withdrawals. Also, Voyager Digital filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, as we spoke about before, due to the money that Celsius owed it. And remember, Celsius also went bankrupt. So it's a trickling and domino effect that when one company goes bankrupt, the rest also go bankrupt. So there has been a lot of talks of interoperability in terms of digital currency, and especially with central banks' CBDCs. So all of these institutions here released reports on Monday that looked at 3 options for cross-border interoperability that addresses challenges which include high costs, low speed, limited accessibility, and the lack of transparency. So one of the 3 approaches to interoperability was compatibility, which is the adoption of common standards, and it would make it easier for payment services providers or PSPs to operate across systems. Secondly, interlinking would allow participants in the system to establish contractual agreements, technical links, standards, and operational components to perform transactions across systems. Finally, a single technical system could host multiple CBDCs. So these are the 3 approaches to interoperability. Maybe one will be integrated, maybe all 3 will be integrated, or just a combination of 2 of these 3 approaches. Also, international collaboration on CBDC design is necessary to overcome cross-border payment challenges. Coordinating design features could help CBDCs avoid unforeseen pitfalls and improve common KYC and AML efforts. So there needs to be a common global standards on how CBDCs are designed so that they're interoperable and they don't face the same constraints as traditional finance, such that transferring CBDCs from one central bank to another or from one country to another is cheap, is fast, and is accessible. Finally, Texas Bitcoin miners power down as heat wave threatens grid with rolling blackouts. So nearly all industrial level Bitcoin miners in Texas have fulfilled their promise to suspend operations while the state waits out a heat wave that's expected to push its electricity grid to its limits. So I think the government of Texas asked the Bitcoin miners to slow down their operations because it's putting so much strain on the grid. And remember, there were rolling blackouts in summers and winters past because when there's extreme temperatures, either too hot or too cold, it puts strain on the Texas grid. And when this happens, rolling blackouts will start due to the fact that its capacity is lowered so much and the demand or the consumption remains the same. So in order to prevent what happened in the past, they've requested the Bitcoin miners to, power down for some time until the temperature normalizes. So Lee Bratcher, president of Texas Blockchain Association, told Bloomberg that over 1,000 megawatts in mining load have already been responded to the state's request, which accounts for over 1% of total grid capacity. And this is a good thing because now it puts less strain in the grid and allows for the grid to stay online and prevent rolling blackouts. And remember that Texas has a lot of Bitcoin miners because it's one of the top US destinations for these miners due to liberal regulations and highly welcoming leadership. So Texas has become the leader of Bitcoin mining in the US. And with that, we come to the end of today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your family and friends. Invest wisely, and cheers.